If you have a pleasant good evening, Samoa, for the sake of our non-Samoan speaking audience, pleasant good evening and welcome to another edition of our Torino program. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of welcoming our special guest on our show tonight. He'll be appearing on a couple of our episodes. It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Peter Baofu. Dr. Peter Baofu is an American visionary and author of 144 theories and visions, with 178 scholarly books and many other numerous articles that he's written, and he's well known all over the world. He's been around the world on various television stations, and also his books and his scholarly writings are used on various universities around the world. It is a pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Baofu, to NUS TV this evening.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Okay, well, to start off, I thought I would just talk a little bit about yourself, and it's your opportunity just to tell the audience who you are and what you are about. And I've noticed that you've been all over the world on various television stations doing interviews. And I wanted you just to touch base on why is it important for you just to get the message out to people about yourself.
Yeah, you had mentioned some of my works already, so maybe I can just add a few more. I'm the author of 178 books so far in all fields of knowledge in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture. That is, in all fields of the formal sciences, the natural sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities. And I try to provide different solutions and visions, and I have provided more than 145 different new visions and theories of the human future in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture. Not just for one culture, one society, and one specific group, but in the entire planet Earth. And that's why I have been in more than 127 different countries by now, and shall be more. So that is the global project that I'm doing, because I'm trying to provide solutions to global problems. And that's why it's so important for me to go to so many different countries. And as you just said, I was also interviewed on TV around the world in relation to some of the solutions that I propose to solve some of the global problems on Earth.
Wow. The word that comes to mind is genius. We talked about solution to global problems. Now, for a small country like Samoa, we are not immune from the global issues that are happening around the world. As you would know, when something happens in Europe or in America or wherever in the world, it also affects our small island nations. Let's move on. I want to talk about socioeconomic issues now.
Okay.
We've touched a little bit about the socialist approach. I understand that you mentioned communism as a more an economic sort of approach to society. Can you touch base on that?
Now, okay, fine. Now we are talking about economic issue, not political issue, because the question of socialism, communism, and all that, those are economic issues. Now, let's say about the notion of equality, efficiency, and those are economic issues in this sense. I also predict, based on remember, I'm not a founding father of only one or two theories. Like Karl Marx is known for communism, or Sigmund Freud is known for psychoanalysis. I'm the founding father of 145 different new theories, visions right now, and I'm still working on more. Why do I do that? The reason is because I have written more than 178 books so far in all fields of knowledge, and I have come to advocate that many of the problems that we have nowadays are so global, so planetary, and soon we are going to outer space. And many of the issues cannot be resolved just on the basis of one perspective, one standpoint, or one theory in one field of knowledge. You have to take into consideration all of them. The problem is our age is not for all this. We are in the age of professional specialization. We are not in the age of Renaissance, the Renaissance man. We are not in the age. People look down, people dismiss anyone like me, for example, who are doing just the opposite. We need people like that, but people like us are ahead of their time because we are not in the age yet. But I do see that in the especially another theory which is called post-humanity, we shall be moving toward that direction. But we are not there yet. That's another theory. So what I'm doing is a precursor of something tremendous to come in the future, but not now. Now we are not there. That's why people now don't talk about what I am proposing, because it's not for now. It's far into the future. So that is one about the economic system in this case. And I mentioned that capitalism, just like democracy in the political sense, will not last. It will be replaced by a new form of economic system I call the post-capitalism. And they are not just one version. There are many different versions, and they will compete and fight with each other. Just as what you have nowadays, even in capitalism, American version of capitalism is very different from the Chinese version of capitalism. And the American version of capitalism is very different from the African version of capitalism in some of those African countries. Just to give you some example, even the one here in Samoa is different too. So this is one of the issue. And if you want to ask the deeper question is, give me some examples of some of the issue which is affecting the economic system such that capitalism will not last. The notion of inequality, for example, the notion of inefficiency, for example. That is some of the very important issue affecting our time. In fact, now we are talking something very important. The trade war, let's say, between the US and China is a good example. You'll see that that is not going to create a lot of better well-being on Earth with this kind of trade war. It's very disruptive, it's very self-destructive. I do think, if you ask me to make a prediction of that, I do think that the US will lose. That is a very self-destructive way of engaging the rest of the world for the economic well-being. So in the case of Samoa, you will see some of that already here. Maybe I can give you some specific examples. Look at the beggars on the street. There are not too many beggars in Apia, but you will see there will be more coming up. Why? Because the traditional communal way of living is broken down, is declining in Samoa. Why? There are many reasons, and one of them is capitalism. Samoa has become more and more capitalistic. And the mindset of people now become more and more money. People can still help each other in the traditional way, but now if you don't have money in Apia, it's very difficult for you to live. And some of the beggars here are those who cannot make it. In the older days, let's say in the, several decades before the independence, let's say in the 19th century, if you were poor, your family can support you. You live in a communal group, okay, everything tied together. But that is declining now over time. That is declining. And another example is the group, the Samoa Victim Support Group that I come to see in Samoa. They are trying to help people who are homeless, who suffer from domestic violence and all that. When I look into the programs, I see something good about them, but I think that there are also a lot of problems in that program. They are, in a way, also creating new problems. And one of them is, because you talk about the social issues, domestic violence is really not a gender issue as people used to think. I think it's oversimplified. It's a very complicated issue. It's, in many cases, it's a financial issue. And that is also related, by the way, with capitalism. And some of the solutions that they are proposing, or the people here are proposing, is to support women to have their own businesses or to have their own independence. But the problem is that once you go into that path, you have created some new social problems because now divorce, separation become more and more the norms. In the older days, there is a communal way of living. People try to work together, whatever problem they are. Now, because of this kind of
independency.
Yeah, so now they encourage women to be independent. You know what? That's why America is called a divorced nation. Why do they call America the divorced nation? Because divorce, separation, it become the family system in America is declining a lot. The Western way of the family system is not working in many ways. And that is a problem now for anyone who try to copy that. And you are also suffering from that because you borrow a lot of ideas, especially from Australia, New Zealand, and all that, and the US, and all that. And you are also experiencing some of the social problem now. So beggars, divorce, separation. You will see more and more will coming up in Samoa. You talk about the social issue, the economic issue. This is some of the examples I give you.
Interesting, because I was just about to ask you about the linkage between the social issues and financial stability globally. As you mentioned that the group that you visited as well. Now that pretty much answered that part of the question. But let's talk global markets. In a country like Samoa, and I'm pretty sure that this happens around the capitalistic world, where a small percentage of well-off people pretty much control the money, to put it more blatantly. How do you see that changing? Would that change under this? Do you foresee that going to be like the 1% will still control 80% of the wealth, and the poor will get poorer, the richer still get richer?
Okay, be careful about this because when you listen to the media, it doesn't matter which media in which country. Media is not so neutral as you might think. They are also pursuing their own agenda. So some of the things that you said, the way that you put it is very leftist. Many of this talk, especially is from the left, especially from those who are radical left. So you have to be careful that you ask the question in a very innocent way, but it's not innocent. It's value-laden. The way that you ask it is asking the question from the leftist standpoint. So you are blaming too much on the elite. So that's the way that they talk. The elites, I mean, this is a dirty word. They flow the word out, and they talk like this. And for those people who are innocent, who don't know much about the issue, they get caught up into that kind of propaganda for them. They create the debate in their own terms to favor the rhetoric. So what you need to do is that if you are a scholar like me, you have to be aware how they flow at you. They play with you, okay? So that's not quite true, by the way, because I think that they are blaming too much on the rich. But I also have been in many countries. I interview a lot of people. I live with some of them, and they are poor people. Poor people are also responsible for many of the problems that they are facing. Let me give you some example. Poor people, many of them, let's say those people on the street, for example, they have mental problems. And we don't like to talk about that because it's negative. Yes. You're not supposed to even, but if you want to face the problem, find a solution, you have to understand the problem. Many of them have emotional problem. Many of them have drug addiction, okay? Many of them have educational issues that they cannot find a job. So now, you blame other people for your own problem? Now, I do not come from a rich family, by the way. I worked all my way up ever since I was very young in my teens to where I am today. And I do not blame on the social environment. Oh, how come I'm not from a rich family, I don't have the privilege and all that. How come, I mean, I can spend all day talking about this, but my time is not productive. So I think that instead of blaming on the other side, you have to look into, this is the same problem in Africa, the same problem in Latin America, the same problem in the Pacific Islands, for example. I think it's time to stop blaming and say what you can do as a group to empower yourself. Stop all this time and energy just blaming the other one. Ask yourself what are the specific things that you can do to empower yourself. inequality has been with us since the beginning of civilization, okay? Except when you go to the prehistoric time, there was not much wealth going on, so there was more or less equal, like among the animals, they don't have too much wealth inequalities. But once you start civilization and culture, then you see that those who are more able tend to succeed more, or work more, tend to succeed more. Those, they are very laid back. Now, having said that, I want to make sure that you do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying that to be poor is bad, just in case you think. I also question the assumption behind your question. In my book on post-capitalism, I said there's no wealth without poverty, and there's no poverty without wealth. That means that for anything that you have which is poor, there's also a lot of wealth that you have too. That means that they're also very good to be poor. But on the other hand, there's also something bad to be poor. On the contrary, if you are very rich, you also have a lot of poverty. There are things that you do not want to talk about, but that is inherent in you, that you have to think about that. So I don't think that to be poor is necessarily bad. There's also a lot of good things about it. But on the other hand, it's not necessarily bad either. But on the other hand, to be rich is not necessarily good about it. But on the other hand, there's something bad about that too. So it can go either way. But I think that don't try to get caught up with this kind of rhetoric, portraying that is the cause of the problem. What should we do about it? Then you already ignore the assumption of your question that the way that you put it is not quite true too at the beginning.
Okay, I guess it's all about seeing the silver lining on issues. I want to bring the conversation over to poverty. Well, you mentioned poverty and how it can be sort of a good thing, and then the other being Philippe, it's also has various issues. I want you to, if you can touch base on poverty. A lot of sociologists, they define poverty as having two sort of unique characteristics, where some say there's absolute poverty and then there's relative poverty, which sort of goes in line with what you just mentioned, that people who are poor tend to have other factors that also system. Can you touch more on that?
Sure. Let me give one example. Look at Samoa. Because we're in Samoa, I talk about Samoa. But if I go to Fiji, I talk about Fiji. If I go to Australia, I talk about Australia. But I pick the example. If you look into the economic indicator, Samoa is not a rich country. The GDP per capita is only about 5,000 or something like that, more or less. I don't know the latest figure, but around that, especially purchasing power parity. Now, if you go to, let's say, Finland, or Qatar, or Macau, I mean, the income per capita can be very high. In Macau, for example, it can be like, I don't know the latest number, but last one that I saw some years ago, it was like 60,000 or something like that per year. Now I'm sure that the number must have gone up. So they are almost 10 times more than you have. Okay, now, but think about it. Okay, the number is low. Look at you. Look at many other people. They are very fat, right? But how can you say that you are poor if you have so much to eat? How can you sustain that fatness, that bigness, if you don't even have much to eat each day? That means that you must have eaten a lot each day, all right? But where do you get the money from? If, according to the economic indicator, you may not have much of any money at all, but you have survived all that, and you seem to be eating quite well. So is that bad, by the way? Not necessarily. And why? Because you are very laid back. You enjoy life. In fact, this is one of the major, in economics, we have another term. We call that the Dutch disease. Now, that's not a good term. They changed it into like the oil curse. Well, that sounds like a good term. Now they keep changing the word. It doesn't matter which word that you use. What I'm trying to say is, I saw this also in Africa. People say that blacks are very poor. True, they don't have much money, but in Africa, a lot of blacks, they eat quite well. They enjoy life. They don't want to work too much. If you ask them, they will say, you cannot even know what's going to happen to you tomorrow. Just enjoy your life now. You may die tomorrow. Why do you have to care so much about tomorrow? Enjoy your life when you are still alive. You think about this later. So it's very laid back environment. You enjoy your life. So you are poor, right? But if you look into some of the happiness indexes, okay, some of the African countries often rank as the happiest countries on earth. Comparable to some of the countries that you may think about, let's say in Scandinavia, those, but there were Western propaganda too. I was in Scandinavia, so you have to be careful about those indexes that you have been buying into, because some of the questions that you ask implicitly, you are using some of the indexes in other countries and try to portray yourself in that way to ask that kind of question. I was in Scandinavia, many of them are not very happy, but they are not reflected in the indexes. Let me give you some example, not just by reading a book. I was there, I talked to people. Some people from Scandinavia, they go to Estonia. For example, do you know where Estonia? Estonia is one of the countries in the Baltic. I saw one of them in one of the hotels. So one evening I was sitting there, so this guy was sitting next to me, so we just have a small conversation. So I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from Helsinki in Finland. I said, but why do you come here? I said, oh, I just come here just for fun. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, you see that I enjoy life. I just want to drink. I like drinking. I like women. But in Helsinki, and there are too many laws, regulations. I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I cannot buy this, I cannot buy that, I cannot drink at certain hours. And my family is there and all that, and it's difficult for me to chase with different women and all that. I come here, I'm free, I do whatever I like. I just spend maybe a few weeks or a few days, whatever, and when I finish, I go back home and I behave myself. Now, why do you, if your country is such a happy country, why do you have to flee your own country and go to another country? And Estonia is not ranked as the happiest country on earth. You see that? There's some problem with the propaganda of the indexes. Now, the same thing in Africa. Western indexes, they try to portray Africa as very poor people, very unhappy. That's not true. Many blacks in Africa are very happy, very laid back. Ladies, they like to dance. Just a small music they hear, even if they are walking on the street, if they listen to some music, some store, even old ladies just dance like this instantly. They enjoy life. And they laugh, they make jokes. They laugh all the time. They have fun. Now, they may not have a lot of cash in the bank. Fine. That's what I mean. Poor, you have a lot of wealth. That's exactly what I mean. There's no poverty without wealth. The more poor you are, the more wealth you have too at the same time, but you don't talk about it because of the propaganda of the indexing. Conversely, you have a lot of money. Well, how come you don't talk about your poverty? Look at all those people who are very rich, and some of them have to disguise themselves when they go out. Why? If you are so happy, so good, why do you have to disguise yourself? They have to hire security to protect them. Why? You are not free anymore. You cannot go anywhere without a security guard. You have to disguise yourself. Yeah, a lot of things that you cannot say, you cannot do, because now everyone talk about you. Is that the freedom that you have? Is this the good thing that you have? You see that there are a lot of trade-off over here. You become the target. So when you have, that's why I say no wealth without poverty too. But you don't talk about that in the index that you glorify yourself. Why? It's obvious, because it's quite natural. Each person who makes the index is creating the index in sociology from their own interest, from their own standpoint, to portray yourself. That's why indexing has a sociology of interest, a network of ideologies hidden behind it. So when you ask questions like this, you are also using an ideology to ask that question. And my job is to expose all of this so that you can see them. But I'm not for the rich, I'm not for the poor, I'm just play with you because you ask this question that way. But if you ask the question on the other side, I will play with you on this side too. I just go back to your side. You understand me? That's my job.
Let's come. Dr. Peter Baofu, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for availing your time to spend with NUS TV. And I'm sure our audiences, as myself, have, I've been intrigued, I've been educated, I've been enlightened, and I'm sure that our audience have felt the same. Thank you very much for being part of this discussion. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our program of